I'm pushing the button and it's recording. Okay,
There we
good.
go. Great.
Sounds good.
Okay, well, if it's okay with everyone, I'll begin with a brief off-time roadmap. And as the other side has told us, I'll do the beginning of the resolution off time, and then I'll do the last part of the resolution on time. Okay, cool. So if everyone's ready, just off time, I'm going to be beginning with framework and definitions and then moving into contentions. And I'll take any POIs or POCs that arise. And the beginning of the resolution, the introduction to it is you've recently met a person who you get along with quite well. They have all of the qualities which you desire most in a best friend or a romantic partner, and you hope that they'll be a significant part of your life going forward. However, the person has avoided sharing information about their past. Whenever you ask about their hometown, childhood, college experiences, or career, their life before they moved to your city, they deliberately change the subject. So now with that, I will start my time now. Okay, so we will be arguing for the government in this resolution, the then specific part being, assuming you gain the ability to look into this person's past, this house would use that ability. We feel like the majority of that introduction period is just very self-explanatory, so we're not going to give any definitions there. But just to be defining in that last sentence, we define the house to just be a rational individual living in a city. The living in a city was just tied in from the introduction there. We define the term use the ability to be you use it to find out the secret, but you're not obviously rewatching the entirety of their past and the entirety of their childhood, both because you wouldn't have the time to do that. It would take you years. And because the entire point of this resolution has been, they are keeping a secret from you. You have a way to find out the secret. Do you do it? So we're very clearly defining using the ability would be using it to find out whatever key secret it is that they've been keeping from you and whatever it is that they're refusing to tell you, but you're not going to learn every single thing about them, both because it wouldn't be possible from a time standpoint and because there's no reason to. And then lastly, we define the weighing mechanism for this round as just the net benefit to the individual. So whichever side benefits the individual who is the house will be this team that wins this round. And just to clarify, using the ability, is that a POI? Okay, so just to clarify, using the ability is a one-time usage. It wouldn't be something where you are continually looking at their past. You would in one time find out the secret, and then that ability would no longer be accessible to you. Yes, I'll take the POI.
It's a POC, so stop time.
Oh, sorry. If it's a POC, you can just unmute and shout it out, by the way.
Okay. I didn't want to interrupt your flow. I just want to clarify. So you're saying that the resolution necessitates that this person has a secret?
I wouldn't say there's necessarily one individual secret, but it says very clearly that they're avoiding sharing information about their past. So there is, be it one thing or a conglomerate of things, there is something secret in that they're not sharing information with you. So there's something they're deliberately not telling you, which is basically the definition of a secret.
Okay, so but like just so we're clear, it's not necessarily that like the secret is anything in specific. It's more that their past is being kept a secret. It doesn't necessitate that there is one particular secret that they have that they're trying to hide. They might just be trying to hide their whole past because they don't want to tell you.
I'll warrant that out a little more, but I think I'll warrant that out on time because I'd feel bad warranting it off time. So if it's okay with everyone, I'm at 1.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Okay, I'll start my time now. Just to quickly warrant out. Think about this from a logical standpoint. Why would someone want to hide their past from you? If you just lived a totally normal standard life, there'd be no reason to withhold the past, especially when we've been told that this is a person who you get along with very well. They have all the qualities you prefer. Like they are in many ways effectively your soulmate. So by that logic, if you had just a normal past, you would be opening up to them about it. Whether or not there's some deep, dark skeleton in the closet, there is something being kept secret. And that is what we seek to find out. But, we wouldn't be listening to every conversation they've had and, replaying every moment of their life. We would be determining what that is. If you think about it logically, no one hides their entire past from someone who they want to spend their life with without a reason. If you found someone who you get along with perfectly, who's, this amazing romantic partner, hiding your entire past from them is a huge detriment to a relationship. Hiding your entire past from them, there's a wrench in the relationship. It causes a real flaw there. I'll take it in a minute. It makes it a lot harder for you to have a real steady relationship when both they don't know everything about you and two, they know they don't know everything about you. They know you're hiding a real aspect of your life. I think logically from a warranting standpoint, the only reason you'd be willing to do that when you find this relationship to be so great is if you were in a situation where there was something you felt you needed to hide, which would likely be a secret of some kind. Yes, I'll take your POI.
What makes you think that this other like potential romantic partner or best friend wants to spend the rest of the life with the actor?
Well, they very clearly say that they say you get along with quite well. So we don't know the exact specifications of the relationship, but they very clearly say you get along quite well. So we are to assume when they say you get along quite well, they have every quality you experience in a person, you want to spend your life with them. It's very, very likely that that is in some way reciprocated, even if they don't both feel that they're going to get married immediately and spend their life together. If a relationship, if they get along well enough together, and if the other person feels that way, there's likely a very large degree of reciprocation. So even if they don't think that they're going to spend their whole life together, they think it's a very serious relationship. They think it's a very solid relationship, and it's a relationship that they're enjoying. So given that it's a relationship they're enjoying, they're very, very unlikely to be willing to do something like this that's such a detriment to the relationship without a reason. I mean, when we assert that they would have no secret whatsoever, we're effectively saying for no reason whatsoever, they would be hiding their entire past and doing all that damage to the relationship, even without thinking they're perfect for you or a soulmate. If you have a good relationship with someone you like and enjoy spending time with, you are not going to risk damaging that for no reason. There would be a reason. This is the opposition trying to assert you're keeping your past secret for absolutely no reason. And that just doesn't make sense. Then there would be absolutely no motivation for you to be doing that. Now, moving into our definitions here, our contentions. Our first contention is that it will strengthen the relationship. So you better understand what they've been through. You better understand the experiences that have shaped their life, which makes it a lot easier to understand them and get along well with them. And just to clarify, I think I already said it, but the weighing mechanism is net benefit to the individual. So the side that proves that they're better for the individual will win this round, but I'm pretty sure I already said that. Now, moving into the first contention again, it strengthens your relationship. You better understand what they've been through, so it's easier to empathize with them. It's easier to sympathize with them. And more so though, the relationship is really damaged by the stress of you not knowing. I mean, you know that they could be anything. Your mind starts to imagine horrible things. Maybe they're a murderer. Maybe they're a white supremacist. Maybe they're a terrorist. They're a rapist. You have absolutely no idea. But inherently, when you're a human and you know there's something being kept from you, your mind goes to the worst place. Your mind starts to imagine the worst things. So in your mind, you're imagining them as someone horrible, and that puts a real serious strain on the relationship. So figuring that out once you realize what it is will very much strengthen the relationship. Moving into our second contention, it potentially gets you out of a dangerous situation. If they were any of these things, a murderer, a white supremacist, a terrorist, or a rapist, you yourself are in danger by being around them. Now, we want to clarify, if this was someone who committed a murder but very much reformed themselves after and resolved to never do it again, you would know this because you've lived through their past, you've experienced this. So if someone committed a murder and became reformed, or if someone was a white supremacist and became reformed, you would know they're reformed and factor that into your decision of whether to stay or whether to go. But what you can also know is if someone is a murderer, a white supremacist, a terrorist, anything like that, but hasn't reformed themselves and hasn't changed how they behave and how they are, you would know that as well, and you'd be able to extract yourself from, again, what we've said is a very dangerous situation that you're in. Moving into our third contention, there's just a peace of mind aspect of it in terms of your mental health. You are sitting there every day knowing I could be spending time with anything. Maybe they're a murderer. Maybe they're a white supremacist. Maybe they killed JFK for all I know. You just have absolutely no way to know what it is. And as we all know, when this secret is being kept from you like that, your mind is going to go to the worst place. You're going to assume the worst, and this is going to really damage your mental health. When you figure it out, if it's actually something that bad, you can leave, which will be much better for your mental health because you're not sitting there thinking about all this time, wow, am I with this horrible person? Or if you find out it's something not that bad, you would then say, okay, perfect. I get to stay with them and I get to know they're not a horrible person. Either way, whether you stay or go, it provides massive peace of mind. It alleviates what is definitely the number one source of stress in your life. So it's a massive, massive increase to your mental health. I mean, you can imagine if you're in this situation where you're thinking, I might marry this person, I might spend my life with this person, and they're refusing to tell you all this stuff about them, that would be the only thing you think about. You'd be thinking all day, what is it? What's the secret? Should I marry them knowing this? This would be effectively the number one source of stress in your entire life. So removing that will have massive mental health benefits. Now, moving to the fourth and final contention for this round, it's relevant to your future. I mean, things like their parents' genetic information, whether or not they have certain hereditary conditions like cancer or certain disorders, things like their life goals and their career goals. They said they don't tell you about their college experience. It is helpful to know in terms of having your children, what legacies they may or may not have. And lastly, what if they're a wanted criminal? I mean, what if they are wanted by the law and they are potentially going to be arrested at some point? You could be charged for harboring a felon or harboring a criminal because you just simply don't know. So this has massive relevance to your future as an individual and to your future together. For all these reasons, we very strongly urge a ballot for the government, and thank you all for your time.
Okay. Awesome. So quick off-time roadmap. We're going to be doing covering on the modeling and framework, followed by the op contention, followed by responses to the government contentions. Is everybody ready? Okay, 8 minutes on the clock. Time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Judge. My name is Andrew Fahey, and today I strongly oppose the resolution that this House would use that ability. And, context provided. That being said, there's a lot of things I want to contest on the definition because I do not think that this was a fair or in good faith contextualization of the definition. Starting first off with the idea that there's pretty much a warranted necessitation that this person is quote unquote keeping a secret. My opponents don't recognize the fact that some people just don't want to talk about their past, and they try to warrant this out by essentially saying that because you get along quite well, there's a reciprocal relationship. This person wants to spend their life with the rest of their life with you. My opponents are making a lot of leaps in logic here. I get along pretty well with Jack Klein. He's my opponent. I, however, I'm sorry, Jack Klein, I know it must be heartbreaking. I don't want to spend the rest of my life with you. Despite the fact that we get along quite well, that does not necessarily mean that we are soulmates. And my opponents are making a large leap in logic to assume that we are soulmates. The only reciprocal statement we get is that you get along quite well, which most people do with most other people. However, everything else in the resolution is explicitly one-sided, as in directed by the actor. They have all the qualities that you desire. You hope that they'll become a significant part of your life. And on top of that, you're the one using the ability.
Point of information.
Yeah, what's up?
If there's something they're not telling you, so something they know about themselves that they're consciously not telling you, isn't that the very definition of a secret? Even if it's not some heinous thing like a murder, just even if it's what college they went to, if they know it and choose not to tell you, is that not the definition of a secret?
Yes, but in your modeling, you said specifically you'd learn the one secret. You wouldn't look at their whole past. I'm sorry to tell you, Jack, but I'm not going to share my entire past with you simply because we don't know each other that well. I don't feel comfortable divulging that much information, whether it's something that should be a secret or not. It's just that you're very clearly in the beginning of a relationship with this person. Look to the word recently. This person, we don't exactly know what this person feels about you, and I feel like my opponents made a large leap of logic in that. So because of that, we have to say that we're operating on the assumption that we don't know how this person feels about you. At the very best, we know that they don't hate you because you get along well with them, but we can't necessarily say what their opinions are about spending the rest of their life with you. That being said, the next thing I want to clarify is the weighing mechanism. They said net benefits for the individual. I also think that this is fairly abusive, especially since that this this resolution affects more than you, more than this House. You're looking at how this impacts your relationship, and more importantly, you're delving into the past of somebody else. And therefore, lastly, because you're a rational actor, you're probably going to be considering more than yourself. Whenever I take an action as a rational actor, I generally try to consider more than my own selfish desires. You have to think about how other people will feel because we are empathetic human beings. And because of that, I'd like to not only expand this House to a rational, empathetic individual, but I'd also like to expand the weighing mechanism to be net benefits for the couple, or at the very least to include the other person who's having their secret violated, because there are very much tangible impacts to that person as well, and we can't just ignore them. That being said, I believe I covered the rest of the warranting. The only other thing I want to provide is on in the background, we hear specifically that they have all the qualities which you desire most. This is one last thing I want to qualify. All the other language within the background guide is specifically vague. You get along quite well. We don't know how well you are. We don't know how well you know them. You've only recently met this person, so we don't know them that well. On top of that, you hope they're going to be a significant part of your life. We don't know how exactly that life will play out. Pretty much everything in the resolution is vague except for one statement. They have all of the qualities which you desire most in a best friend or romantic partner. It's not that you think they have or they appear to have all the qualities. It's specifically that they do. This is the only objective statement in the resolution, and because of that, that is the only thing that we can take as objective fact. It is determined by the resolution that they absolutely do have the best qualities. Not that you perceive them to, but they absolutely do. And we'll get into why that's important later. With that, I think that covers most of everything I wanted to on the definitions. There's a lot there, and I felt like we had to clear that up before we got into the case. With that, let's move into the first op contention, which is the idea of the natural development of the relationship. The main claim here is that if your relationship is healthy and maturing, they will eventually open up to you about their past themselves. So there's a few warrants for this. The first is that you only recently met this person, which meaning your relationship is fairly young. Of course, they're not going to tell you their entire life story when you've only recently met them. It took me like probably a year of knowing Alex before he learned my life story. Like, it's just kind of natural that you wait for the natural progression to open up more as you get to know a person more. Because you've only recently met them, you can't necessarily blame them for not wanting to tell you all of their past. Secondly,
information.
Yeah, what's up?
So you said that you didn't know everything about Alex until you had known each other for a year, but there's basic questions mentioned in the resolution, like where they grew up and like where they went to college. So let's say it was the day after you and Alex met and he asked you where you go to school and where you grew up. Are those things you would tell him, or would you immediately change the subject and keep those secret?
I mean, it really depends on how open of a person you are. We don't know what this person's trust issues are like. That being said, I'd probably tell Alex, but just because where I grew up is different from where I actually live. So it's one of the few interesting conversation starters about me. But I think I'm a special exception in that case. Anyway, moving on to the warrants. On top of that, we also see that it will take both of you time to open up. This is a natural indicator of trust and development within your relationship. This development is stunted and trivialized then when you already know their secrets and thus have a position of power. We see that it no longer means the same to you that they open up to you naturally. They aren't sharing a secret. They're saying something you already know. This creates a power imbalance because you now have to keep a secret from them, saying that you already knew this beforehand. So this ultimately means that the relationship isn't going to develop on equal footing, which I'll get into the impacts of later. Secondly, we can look at a second alternative where you tell them you now know about their past, to which they're immediately going to respond with, why the hell did you snoop into my past? Why don't you trust me? It's that idea of you need trust in order to develop and really open up a relationship. And on top of that, if you've only recently met this person and you already know this much about them, they might also assume you're a stalker. So there's just a whole bunch of bad implications of if you let them know. So at the worst case scenario, even if you're a good actor, there are subconscious implications, aka you'll see the person differently because you know this stuff, which is unfair to that person. There are a few impacts to this. The first is that of relationship damage. Your relationship from day one is broken and thus very likely to fail. Furthermore, this is an abusive behavior as it creates power asymmetry, as you know their secrets, but they don't know yours. We also know that relationships collapse if you spill the secret and they don't think you trust them. With this, the second impact is that of a violation of autonomy. By specifically going into this person's secrets, you are actually violating their personhood simply because one of the defining characteristics of humans is their ability to act freely. The fact that you don't let them get a choice of whether or not you know about their past is inherently a violation of their autonomy. This ultimately devalues their personhood in your eyes, which inherently hurts this other individual as it dehumanizes them. With that, let's move into my opponent's case. First off, on the argument about strengthening your relationship, I don't think this is the case at all. Having trust issues never strengthens their relationship, and that's literally what my opponent's entire case is based off of. You're paranoid. You're a paranoid individual. There's a few responses to this. First of all, you don't have to be paranoid because they have all the qualities that you desire by the definition. This inherently means that you don't have to risk some issues about them being a murderer, because if one of the qualities you have is they won't kill you, then they're going to have that quality. Secondly, we can see the fact that because any of these risks actually being true has a very minimal probability, and because my opponent specifically said our actor is a rational actor, they're probably not going to have excessive paranoia trust issues, because the rational actor can say the probability is low enough where I don't have to be concerned. I know this is true because the majority of rational actors that I've met are not super paranoid. Second, moving forward on, like most of their arguments pretty much rely on this idea of peace of mind and being excessively paranoid. And I think the response is just across the board. One, you don't have nothing to be paranoid about, and two, a rational actor wouldn't be paranoid. So it only really benefits your relationship. For all of these reasons, I just strong vote for the opposition team. Thank you.
And just so you guys know, Madhav's audio has been having issues at various points during this tournament. So just if he cuts out at any point, or Madhav, like I'll let you know if you cut out for me, but if anyone hears him cut out, just let him know. And what we've done prior is I will FaceTime him and he speaks through my microphone when those issues are happening. So if we need to, we can switch that.
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
But we did the whole test at the beginning, so I don't think it should be an issue, but you know.
Yeah, hopefully it's not an issue. I'm just going to start with a brief off-time roadmap. like other people have done. I'm going to start off by going through the definition points that are brought up, then go through my opponent's contentions, and then I will go back through my own contentions and respond to the responses that were given in the leader of opposition speech. Yeah, okay. Is everyone ready? Speak now. If you're not ready, okay. If so, I will begin my time in 3, 2, 1. Okay, judges, I'm going to start with this definition problem. My opponents really give 3 problems with the definitions. I'm going to tell you why all of these aren't true. First, they tell you that it's unfair for the government to say that this is like a reciprocal relationship between both of the people, and that this other person is even in a position right now to divulge any of this information to you. Let me read this out to you again. This person has all of the qualities which you desire most in a best friend or romantic partner, and you are a rational individual here. You've already determined that this person is likely to be a best friend for you or a romantic partner who you very well could see your life moving forward. They tell you about rational people, right? I tell you, as a rational person in your life, would you say, hey, I've met this person for 3 minutes and I've already know I want to spend my entire life with them, or they're going to be a best friend for the rest of my life? No, they're just going through and they're saying, just because it says recently, you've like just met them right now. Recently means you could have met them over the last month or something like that. And over time, you've developed and you've met with them and you've talked to them more and more, right? The idea that you haven't been able to develop a like actual strong relationship with them just because you met recently doesn't flow through. More so, you could have just met someone a week ago, but then spent nearly the entire week with them and become more and more friends with them and spent more time with them. There's no way for us to know if this recently here thing is 6 months or 1 week. And we tell you that even in the case in which it is you've only known this person for 1 week, for you as a rational person to already have this opinion that you would desire to spend your entire life with this person or be lifelong friends with this person, you've probably spent a large amount of time with this person. And you as a rational thinker saying, hey, I'm going to like invest my time on one become romantic partners or best friends with these people, you probably think that they also have a reciprocal relationship where they also enjoy spending time with you. And more so, you've probably only developed these feelings if these people have already decided to spend a lot of time with you. And you've probably only been in interactions in which topics like childhood, college experiences, career, stuff like that, when stuff like that comes up, is only when you've already gone into deep conversation with someone. Clearly, they've been entering deep conversations, and this person has been withdrawing when going into these facts about them, right? So they've clearly already been talking to this person a lot, and more so, they already know that you share many close qualities with each other. And if you as a rational person think, wow, we share all these qualities, we probably will get along really well, they probably also will think, wow, we share a lot of qualities we're probably going to get along with really well. So I've warranted most of that out to you. The also really important thing here is the house. If I can convince you that the house should just be a rational individual living in the city, which they never contest, they contest the weighing mechanism, they don't contest the house here. We tell you that this person will care most about themselves, and they will care most, and this is like the third point that they bring up, where they talk about the weighing mechanism, and they say we should be looking at not just the net benefits to individuals. What you need to keep in mind here is this individual is going to care the most about themselves, the mental health benefits to themselves, what's happening to themselves, and of course, the relationship is going to be factored into this, but more so, they're going to care about what's actually happening to them rather than what's happening directly to both parties here. The only thing they'll care about with the other party in the status quo right now is about the relationship with someone. They won't care about everything that's happening with this person. I think I'm a rational person, but at the end of the day, I care most about what's happening to me rather than what's happening to everyone else around me. Even my best friend right now, like Jack's one of my closest friends, but frankly, I care more about how things affect me than I do how they affect Jack. I love you, Jack, but frankly, that's how I feel about it. Like a lot of times, I'm just going to care about myself more than I'm going to care about this other person. And I would say, because our relationship is fractured right now and they're not telling me things, it even makes even more sense that I care more about myself right now. Maybe in the world in which our plan is passed, maybe you'll start caring more. Yeah, Andrew, what's your question?
All right, but just to be clear, you still do care about Jack. You still are empathetic.
Yeah, I care about
Jack,
Jack, but I care about myself more than I care about Jack here. So sure, in the net benefit calculation, that will be in there. I'll care about the relationship, but more so I will care about how the relationship factors into how I feel. The next point they bring up here is that people don't only have one secret. Jack really responded to this excellently already. They have, quote, this person has avoided sharing information about their past. They have neglected to tell you things. Neglecting to tell you things means that they're keeping something away from you. What does it mean to keep something away from you? That means they have a secret. They clearly have a secret here. Like maybe it's not one definitive secret about something, but they probably either they have like one definitive secret about something, or they have a myriad of secrets that they're keeping from you, and you're gonna look into these secrets and see what's happening. This secret, and like what we tell you more so, is that you're gonna assume this secret is horrible. As a human being, they tell you, and this is one of the responses they give on later when they go to our case, is they tell you that a rational person isn't gonna assume that like this thing is horrible, or assume that's really bad. What we tell you, this person cares about them a lot already, right? And they're a rational thinker, but They think, hey, we care about each other a lot. Why are they keeping secrets from me? A rational person is, of course, going to think, why is this person who I'm really close with and who I think I'm developing a really good bond with not talking to me and not telling me basic facts, right? It's like, that's what's really important to understand here. And this is going to be part of my rebuttals to their contentions. They're not telling you primarily basic facts. They try and extend it to you, which is false, like, which is basically a false lie for this entire speech, that they're refusing to divulge their entire life story to you. That's not true. They're refusing to tell you small details like their hometown, their child, just where they went to college, stuff like that. It's not like they're refusing to tell you some deeply personal story about them. They're refusing to tell you basic details about them, their career aspirations, stuff like that. That's stuff that you can discern after knowing someone for a day or two, right? Like, I feel like I already know that about Jack when I met him like 3 days in and we were in like 9th grade. Those are things that you can learn pretty quickly about people. Now, going to each of their contentions. Their first contention talks about the natural development of the relationship. And they say, like, eventually you'll open up and you just met this person. One, I've told you, there's no way to understand, like, even if time-wise you've just met this person, right? Even if we take them under their word that, like, you only have known this person for a week, you've probably spent a lot of that week with them. So the volume of time you've spent with them is large, even if it's been over like a short span of time, but to develop these feelings for them. And then more so, knowing someone recently can also mean you just learned, met someone 6 months ago. If someone's life is like a 30-year-old right now, meeting someone 6 months ago or meeting someone a year ago is relatively recently in the grand scheme of your life. So there's no way for them to just say it's been a week. But more so what they say is eventually this person will open up to you. Why do you have any reason to believe this person will eventually open up to you? In the status quo right now, when you already share a lot of qualities with them and you're spending quality time together, they are not opening up even the most basic facts to you. This is actually going to flow back into our side where you see that because they're not even sharing these basic facts with you, you start to have developed more and more trust issues inside the relationship because you think, wow, what's going to happen when we need to have like serious conversations or conversations about them actually telling me their life history? They're probably not going to tell me these things because they're not even telling me these basic facts right now. Like, then this is the key thing here. These aren't like a whole life story thing that they try to put. These are basic facts about like where you went to college, where your like hometown is, like basic facts about your childhood, like how many siblings you had, stuff like that. The key thing here is this information itself is like really hurtful because one, like this information could end up revealing something really negative like about them that we tell you in our fourth contention, but more so it's just the fact that they're refusing to tell you basic things. That's going to strain your relationship so much. And then the other thing they tell you is like the relationship now does not develop on equal footing. It's not developing on equal footing in their world either, because on their world, the other side, this other person is keeping a secret from you. And what I tell you is because we're looking at the house as you'd rather have you keeping a secret from them than them keeping a secret from you. In either world, someone's going to be keeping a secret from another person. And this expands me to my next point. They talk about what if you tell this person about like what you figured out. You're probably not going to tell the person what you figured out because you're a rational thinker, because you understand it's probably going to jeopardize the relationship. As we tell you, our first two contentions contend with this. We tell you in our first contention that either this isn't actually a bad thing that you end up finding out, and therefore it strengthens your relationship with them because in your head now you no longer have doubt about them. In the second contention, you learn something bad about them, and then you distance yourself with them because you want to get out of a dangerous situation. In either of these two scenarios where you find out something good or you find something bad, you don't have to confront them about that. That's key to understand here. In their second contention, they talk about how you'll see this person differently and how this will break the relationship. Again, I tell you, there's already a power asymmetry in the world they live in, but this power asymmetry hurts you in their world. In our world, it's hurting the other person more than it's hurting you, which means it's elevating you and helping you and giving you the power asymmetry. We agree, power asymmetries are bad, but they exist in either world, and I would rather have them hurt the other person than hurt me when I'm a rational actor who's looking for my best interest. Finally, the only contention they really refuted was my first contention, where they say, one, you like share qualities with them and you can have the quality of not murdering. Have you ever described your friend as like, hey, one of the qualities of like Jack here is that he doesn't murder people? Like, that's just not a quality that you define of people. And second, the partner is rational. So even if you tell them something and you're like pretty clear about it, maybe they won't freak out about it. But I've told you already, by giving you these like two worlds, either it's a good thing or a bad thing, you're probably not going to end up telling them about this secret that you find out. For all of these reasons, I so strongly side with the government. Thank you.
All right, same order. Everyone ready? Great. 8 minutes on the clock. I will start my time in 3, 2, 1, Go. All right, first let's talk about my opponent's refutations to our framework. First, they tell you that ultimately this individual is only refusing basic, so they tell you that the individual is only refusing to tell you basic details like their hometown, their childhood, their college experience, etc. However, if you actually look to the topic, those are examples of the things they're not telling you. If you look at the specific language in the resolution today, it is their life before they move to your city, their entire life before they move to your city. It is a big chunk of their experience. It's not small details that are suspect. And so ultimately that argument kind of falls through. Next, they tell you that ultimately, rationally, if this person's not telling you about literally their entire life prior to when they recently moved to a city, they must be a murderer. And that is what the rational actor is going to think. However, the rational actor, I assume if you look like statistically at the distribution of people, the percentage of people that are murderers versus the percentage of people that have PTSD, trust issues, trauma, that ultimately have a tough time opening up to other people, there is a much higher likelihood that they are someone who has an internal mental health issue, or they have some reason they don't want to tell you their past other than murder, just because the percentage of murders in the population is so much low relative to all the other explanations that it could possibly be. Next, they tell you that, go ahead.
If you're in a romantic relationship with someone and you feel like you've been getting along really well over the last month with this person, and they neglect to tell you any information, is your mind going to automatically go to the worst case scenario because you feel like you've already shared such a close bond with these people?
No, I'm not going to think they're trying to murder me. I'm not going to think they're a white nationalist. No, that's the worst scenario, and I don't think I'd go to that. I'd assume there's some other issue, but I'll also talk about what I do in that situation and how this is not the appropriate response to that situation at all. Sorry, I have some things I got to get through. Some other responses my opponents make on the front of case on the definitions. Next, they tell you that ultimately, likely, if you've been talking to this person for a while, they're going to want to tell you everything. However, they misunderstand the point that my partner makes. The point that my partner makes is that even if you feel like you're getting along with this person quite a bit, they might not feel that back for you. They might think you're a friend, they might like you, but that doesn't mean they think they're your best friend. It doesn't mean they want to spend the rest of their life with you. That doesn't mean they want to marry you. And ultimately, that judgment is only being made on the side of the house, of the person we're talking about, not the other person. And pretty much all of the arguments that my opponents make in today's debate rely on the assumption that they also want to be in a relationship with you, because that's how this situation, frankly, doesn't look creepy. Because if the other person doesn't want to be your absolutely best friend right out of the gate, well, guess what? This turns you into a stalker. This is stalker behavior right here, basically prying into their entire life prior to they move to a city, so you can know every single detail because you want to understand everything about this person and their history and who they are and everything. If you look at it the right way, this person is probably a stalker, is probably abusive, is probably toxic. It's only in this very limited worldview in which you assume that the relationship is 100% mutual can you make this person not look bad. Moving on, my opponents then tell you that, well, let's assume like we've spent like a month with them. It's not just a week, it's a month. And so by a month, you know if they're your soulmate or not. I'd also say that that's not true either. Even if this person is a rational actor, in the United States, 50% of divorces end in marriage. And unless you're arguing that a majority of people in America, 50% of marriages end in divorce. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. And so unless you're saying that a majority of people in America are not rational actors in any way, shape, or form, you probably, even after years of dating, can't tell whether this person is going to be your soulmate forever. So the soulmate argument pretty much falls through, even if you assume they're a rational actor. Ultimately, the only perspective that you have is that you think that you like them, but you don't know what they like about you, and you don't know how well and how close they want to be with you in terms of your relationship. Next, my opponents then tell you that you're definitely going to have deep conversations with this person already, so you must have talked about everything in their life, and if there's anything they're keeping from you, it must be suspect. Once again, probability-wise, there's a very low chance that they're a murderer and they're going to kill you. Secondly, if you spend a week with person, if you spend a month with a person, I don't think you're going to delve into the deepest parts of their psyche. And it's not fair to assume that like this is something they're going to keep from you forever for the rest of your relationship, for the rest of your friendship, just because they didn't tell you it in the beginning of your young relationship. And it's a young relationship because you recently just met the person. Sorry, I have some things I got to get through. And the final argument that my opponents make on the top of case is they tell you that ultimately this house is defined as the individual. Thus, they're only going to care about themselves. Two responses to this. First of all, my partner in his speech redefines this House to be not only a rational actor, but an empathetic actor. And this is an argument that goes unresponded to by my opponents. So this is flowing through in today's debate. We have defined this to not only be rational, which we agree with, but also an empathetic individual. Thus, we see that this person is going to be
Point
considering.
of clarification, stopping time. So,
Go
sorry,
ahead.
are you saying you called our House definition abusive, or are you just saying you defined the House yourself? Because I never heard an abusiveness argument.
I did. I said like I made abusive arguments other ways. In other places. I don't know if I called the House abusive, but I did redefine the House to empathetic. And
Okay.
Alex is saying that we didn't hear a response to that.
Okay, anyway, starting time. Now, the second response there is that if you care about your relationship and you're only self-interested, then you want to do what's best with your relationship. And ultimately, we're going to prove how this is basically ruining your relationship and you're a stalker. And so it's going to do really damage against you as well, even if you're 100% self-interested. And I believe that is all that's all the responses. Moving on, let's talk about the one op argument about natural development of a relationship. My opponents have a few responses here. The first response is that once again, you probably spend a lot of time with this person. Thus, you have to be soulmates. You have to be, there's some sinister reason that they're keeping things from you, and that you have to know that you're destined for each other. Once again, I'm reiterating the same responses. You don't really know how the other person feels about you. You feel like you love this other person. You want to spend the rest of your life with that, but you don't know that they reciprocate that. Then they tell you that ultimately, once again, they reiterate that it's only basic facts that they're not telling you. But once again, look to the topic. It's not basic facts. It's basically their entire life prior to the time that they moved to this city, which is pretty much a big chunk of their life. Finally, they make this response in which they try and turn the argument about having equal. Then they tell you that this person clearly doesn't trust you. And that ultimately in this situation in which there's this trust imbalance, the best thing you should do is basically use this like wonderful magical power and peer into the rest of their life. However, if you're really like a rational actor and you want to do what's best to salvage the relationship, since this person feels so great about the relationship, you can either, I guess, walk away if you really feel that bad about it. Ultimately, there's no reason you have to violate this individual's autonomy, which, by the way, autonomy impacts flow through. There's no response to that. So there's no reason you have to violate this person's autonomy in order just to walk away from the relationship, or you can straight up just ask them what's going on. Right? Why aren't you telling me this? And you can approach it directly. Ultimately, the idea that you have to resort to the most extreme version of like fantastical magic in order to understand who this person is and work out your issues. If on day one, in like the beginning of your relationship, you're resorting to these techniques, your relationship probably isn't a good relationship and is pretty toxic right out of the gate. And so ultimately using it really isn't going to fix anything. Because like, what do you expect? If you say, I think, I don't trust you, you're not telling me about your life, so I went and learned everything about you prior to moving to the city. You think they're going to have a good reaction? You think they're going to be happy? You think they're going to want to keep going with your relationship? So ultimately, you shoot yourself in the foot by ruining your relationship. Then onto the gov arguments. Really, most of the stuff is cross-applied since they don't really spend much time on their case either. The one unique point they make here is ultimately that murdering someone is not a quality that you typically want in a friend or like think about. But let me make a distinction here. It's that most people aren't regularly thinking about whether their friends are murderers, which, by the way, shows that most people are not paranoid about whether their friends are murderers or not. But secondly, it totally is a quality just because you don't think about protected time. Just because you don't think about it all the time, it definitely is a quality. If you ask someone, do you want your friends to be murderers or not? They wouldn't say, I don't know, I never thought about it. They would give you a clear, concrete answer. And so once again, the original point here is that the only concrete thing that we're given in this topic today is that this person, they have all the qualities which you desire most in a best friend or a romantic partner. They have all the qualities that you want in this kind of person, including not being a murderer. And so thus all their arguments about them being a white nationalist, them being a murderer, also go out the door for that reason. Because by the definitions of this debate, which they don't redefine or contest or anything like that, this person's not a murderer. So for all these reasons, vote no. Op.
Excellent. 4 minutes on the clock. Time will begin in 3, 2, 1. Judge, we oppose today's resolution because the behavior promoted by the government team today is borderline toxic towards the relationship and therefore cannot meet the weighing mechanism of net benefits for, as we defined, for the group. Now, we provide specific warranting as to how any rational, empathetic person, which my opponents concede the House to be empathetic, as well as concede that empathy would calculate into would factor into the wing mechanism. My opponents simply do not provide any consideration for the other half of this relationship. This is not only damaging to the relationship and thus the initial individual, which means we win under their framework, but it is also damaging to the other individual, a direct impact that again goes uncontested throughout this entire debate round. So let's get into this. Starting first off on the neg argument, there are two unique reasons you're voting for the negation here today. The first is that of it inherently damages the relationship between you and your partner. My opponents try to posit the idea that because your partner is willfully and under their own decision keeping a secret from you because they don't want to tell you for whatever reason, we can't assume for what reason, we somehow have the obligation, or better, we have the power, we have the right to pry into their past to dig up what they don't want us to know. Now, one, not only is this a blatant violation of this other person's autonomy and this completely dehumanizes them, which is one of the biggest impacts in today's round, but two, it absolutely creates a power imbalance in the relationship. We hear no response to the idea that it not only creates a good power balance because it pretty much removes any sanctity of them trusting you with the secret because you already know it. But more importantly, you somehow have the idea that you get to decide who keeps what secrets in the relationship. You had the decision of saying, you know what, I don't want them to keep a secret. I want to be the one keeping a secret. I'm going to pry into their past. I don't care what they're thinking about. I don't care what their considerations are. I want to make the decision for myself. That not only sets up extremely toxic behavior for a relationship by creating such a power imbalance that the relationship is founded upon, but we hear no response as to why this is we hear no response as to why this simply has no positive benefits for the individual. Let's move into that. All of my opponent's arguments, all four of them, pretty much rest on the assumption that you are going to be mad paranoid. And they pretty much range from ideas of what if this paranoia is true to what if this paranoia affects you. One, we already tell you that the paranoia probably won't affect you because any rational actor isn't going to be paranoid. Secondly, you're going to buy the fact that it's a lot more damaging to the relationship and thus all impacts flow for opposition when you actively disrupt their autonomy and actively go against what your partner wants, proposed partner wants, just because you feel like you have the upper hand and feel like you have the authority to make that kind of decision. Thirdly, you're going to be preferring us because the resolution literally gives you an exact statement, but regardless of what you know, there's a guaranteed objective chance that they have all the qualities you desire, which of course can be things like they're compassionate, things like they're kind, things like they're not a murderer, things that make them so you don't actually have to worry about the secret, which is not only threats to your own safety are either negligible at a close to zero probability, or if you go with the definition at zero, but secondly, you're also only going to be hurting the relationship if you do this. So the only So with that in mind, I think the only thing I really want to preempt is we try to hear this idea that our opponents try to say, oh, your partner would understand. Your partner is rational. One, any rational person would know that you dug into their background and therefore they know that you have trust issues. This inherently means that if our partner is rational, they're inherently going to want to end the relationship with you because one, we don't know how they feel about you in exact terms, and more importantly, two, you violated their trust. How are they supposed to trust you again? Because apparently you get to make all the decisions about them. That's a toxic relationship that they wouldn't want to be in. Secondly, there's nothing in the definition that says that the romantic partner is rational. That was just like a quick aside that I saw in response. I wanted to make sure it was covered. So pretty much across the case, the only way you can vote for the affirmation, vote for the government is if you somehow buy the idea that this is not only a perfectly loving and fully reciprocal relationship, which we simply cannot assume, but we also have to buy into the fact that because you are the one with this power, you have the right and authority to pretty much write the relationship in the way that you want, which is not only completely unempathetic, it is completely immoral. For all of these reasons, I urge a strong vote for the opposition team. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to be beginning with two quick clarifying points for this round. Then I'm going to go through the op case, then the gov case, and then I'm going to finish on weighing under two voter issues. So with that, if everybody's ready, and I'm gonna have to speak a little fast during this round. So if I'm going too fast for anyone, just let me know and I'll immediately slow down. So if everyone's ready, I'll start my time now. Okay, just two quick observations in this round. One, they try to tell us that they have all the qualities you desire in a partner, which means they're a perfect person. They're not a murderer. They're not a white supremacist. They're not anything. One, I think it's very abusive to assume that they have to have all these qualities because you'd have no way to know this. Second, okay.
We redefine exactly this objective statement in the resolution in the very first speech in the LOC, and we hear no response to it throughout the entirety of the MG. Therefore, we don't think it should be considered on.
We don't hear that specific response.
We've been talking, well, sorry, we've responded to this on numerous occasions, and we've talked very frequently about what you do know about your partner and what you don't know about your partner. One of our biggest points on our side has been, here's what you do know, here's what you don't know about them. So I'm applying that point of what you know versus what you don't, which has been a huge point of contention throughout the entire round to that point, but I can move on if the judges want me to.
Judge's discretion.
Okay, just starting my time again. Now, okay, just very quickly, one, there's no way you'd know this. This doesn't even make sense. But even so, these aren't things that are qualities. My partner gave you a really strong response to this. When you're asked what are the qualities you're looking for in a partner, you say kind, caring, respectful. You wouldn't say not a murderer, not a white supremacist. These aren't qualities. These are very random things. Then moving just into the definitions very quickly, they said that they redefined the house as an empathetic individual, but they never called our house definition abusive. I don't understand that because we provided a definition of the house that they conceded wasn't abusive in any way. So I don't think it makes a huge difference, but at the same time, I don't know how they would have just redefined our house. More so though, we very clearly explained why you should be considering yourself first. Every rational actor would consider themselves first. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this though, because I don't think it'll have huge impact in the round. Going through the opposition flow, first of all, they make this point that you're eventually gonna open up. They'll eventually open up, and they phrase it as, well, you just met. They're not gonna tell you the deepest part of their psyche is the quote they use, the deepest part of their psyche. How is where you grew up and where you went to college the deepest part of their psyche? They try to misconstrue this the whole round as well. They're not telling you their entire past. They're not telling you their deepest, darkest secrets. So, it's not that bad and they'll tell you later. They're not telling you anything. They're not telling you basic information. I asked them, if your partner didn't tell you where you were from, where he's from, or where you went to school, would that concern you? And they admitted, yes. I'm going to get back to that later, but you can really drop this point that they'll eventually open up because they're not keeping their deepest parts of their psyche secret. They're keeping everything secret. Secondly, they say you see them differently and there's a power asymmetry. My partner did a good job of turning this and saying there's already a power asymmetry in that they know a lot about you and you know nothing about them. In our world, it's actually more equal because you know close to equal amounts about each other. But also we said that it's actually better for you to have the power asymmetry in your favor. So you'd favor that. So that's two strong rebuttals why that falls. And then lastly, they brought up this point about what if you tell them. They very clearly just will not tell them because they've given you real reasons of why it'll destroy their relationship. This is a rational person. There's no reason they'd tell them they looked into it. My partner gave you real warranting for why they'd be upset about it. So they would never tell them. They never engaged with that warranting for why they wouldn't tell them. So you can just drop that contention of what if they tell them, because they never gave you any warranting for why they would tell them, whereas we gave them real warranting for why they wouldn't. That was never engaged with. Going through our flow very quickly, in our first contention, we told you it strengthens the relationship. They said, oh, well, trust issues hurt the relationship. There's actually there's more trust issues if you know nothing about them than once you know some stuff. It's a lot harder to trust someone when they just won't tell you anything about them. So we think trust issues are worse than their side. They totally dropped our second contention about dangerous situations. I'm going to harp on that later. And they also dropped our fourth contention about future relevance. But going to the third contention about peace of mind, they said, well, they're rational. They won't assume they're a murderer. But let me say, everyone in this room is a rational person. We're all very rational individuals. If you were getting to know someone and you said, where'd you grow up? I'm not going to tell you. Where'd you go to school? I'm not going to tell you. And they just wouldn't tell you anything about themselves. Would you start to get a little nervous? And would your mind start to wander? Of course it would. Even rational people, their mind wanders. We are all rational people and we would all start to assume the worst. We gave you clear warranting for why even as a rational individual, they will assume the worst. All they've really said is they're rational. They won't think they're a murderer. They are a rational thinker. That doesn't mean their mind can't wander. And that doesn't mean it can't have real mental health impacts. Now, weighing this debate under two separate issues, I divided it up first off into the relationship and secondly into your safety as an individual. When it comes to the issue of the relationship, we very much believe we've won this point. We've very clearly shown you why you strengthen the relationship because now you better understand what they've been through. You no longer have the trust issues they tell you about. We've told you that you cure the stress of not knowing. We've told you that you have the peace of mind because now you know that they're not a murderer, whatever it is, and the relevance to your future. Your future is very important for the strength of your relationship. They just totally dropped this point about genetics. What about children? What about, career goals? What if their career goal involves moving across the country? I mean, these are all massively relevant to the relationship. They just totally dropped that. Their only points on the relationship are you might see them differently, at which point we've said you'll actually see them better because rather than assuming they could be anything, a murderer, a white supremacist, whatever, you'll now know exactly what they are, which will be better. So that turns to our side. They've said there is a power asymmetry. My partner explained to you why there's actually less of a power asymmetry in our world, turns to our side. They made the point of, well, what if you tell them? My partner warranted out very clearly why they won't tell them, so you can just drop that. And lastly, they made the point that it dehumanizes them. And as my partner very clearly said, you still see them better. Rather than assuming that they could be a murderer or a white supremacist, you see them as a better person. So they're not dehumanized. And also in relationships, people snoop all the time and they don't just no longer view the other person as a human. So that just doesn't make any sense realistically. Then moving into though, so by that logic, we believe we very clearly won this voter issue of the relationship. We strengthen the relationship. We strengthen both of your mental health, and we account for your future. While you may be able to buy that in the very short term, theirs is slightly better. In the long term, when you're dealing with these future issues, we're far better for the relationship. Oh, stopping time.
The snoop argument about how people snoop all the time in relationships and it doesn't hurt it is no.
I'm pretty sure my partner brought up that it doesn't dehumanize them because they're now knowing more about them, the same as in other situations, but it's not a huge point for my round, so I can move on.
Yeah, I didn't figure it was.
Okay.
But judge's discretion on.
Well, I mean, if it's a live point, Jack, can you tell me where it is on the flow?
I had thought my partner had made the point that you actually see them better, not as dehumanized, and in relation to the average world, that's basically what happens. But I may have misinterpreted something he said.
He did make that point. We're specifically contesting the argument that where you said that like everyone snoops all the time, so this isn't really a unique situation, which we think is new.
I thought it was brought up and I have it written down, but it's possible I just wrote it in prep and it wasn't said. It's really not important for the round, so I can move on if you guys would prefer.
Jack, I view it 4:45. So
yeah, I have around the same.
Yep.
Starting my time again now, we don't really think this is that important a point because whether or not it dehumanizes them, you still see them as a better individual. If you realize that they're saying not a white supremacist or not a murderer, I'd say you arguably see them as far more human, so that we still win that point on the turn. But secondly, and the more important thing is this other voter issue of safety. They have no arguments for your safety, and they never contest our point that you can get out of a potentially dangerous situation where you could be with someone who would harm you, abuse you, do anything like that, and that you could potentially be tried for a crime if they are a wanted criminal. We also have the peace of mind argument, which helps your mental health, and the future points. So we very clearly believe we've won on the issue of safety and the issue of relationship. But even if you somehow give them the issue of relationship, even though we won on the long-term judges, we think safety is far more important because you can have another relationship if you're safe and alive. You can't if you're dead. Safety is far more important. It's paramount to your personal health. It's paramount to everything you do, including other relationships. So even if you give them this voter issue of relationship, we still firmly believe we win the round just off of winning safety, even though we've won both. For all these reasons, we very strongly urge a ballot for the government, and thank you all for your time.
Great debate round, guys. Congratulations on semis.
Yeah,
Thanks, you too. That was
really
definitely our closest round of the day and our most fun.
Nice. Okay, we'll let judges make their decision.